There is a form of power that most people never learn to recognize. It does not announce itself. It does not need to intimidate anyone. It does not depend upon being the loudest person in the room. It is the quiet power of a person who has learned to govern himself. Imagine two people facing the same insult. One reacts instantly. His heart races. His pride is wounded. He must answer. He must prove himself. He must make the other person understand. The second person feels the same emotion, but pauses. He observes. He thinks. He asks himself what response serves his long-term interests. The first person was controlled by the moment. The second controlled the moment. That difference may appear small, but it can change an entire life. Because power is not simply the ability to make things happen. Power is the ability to remain deliberate when circumstances are trying to make you impulsive. And self-control is the mechanism that makes that possible. Every day, people surrender pieces of their power without realizing it. They surrender it to anger, to approval, to distraction, to temptation, to comparison, to fear, to the opinions of strangers, to people who know exactly which emotional button to press. But imagine what happens when you stop giving everyone access to your internal world. Imagine becoming difficult to provoke, not because you are emotionless, but because you understand your emotions. Imagine becoming difficult to distract because you know exactly what deserves your attention. Imagine becoming difficult to discourage because your identity is no longer dependent upon today's results. That is where real strength begins. The first battlefield of power is not the workplace, society, relationships, or the people around you. It is your own mind. Before you can meaningfully influence your circumstances, you must learn to influence your reactions, habits, attention, desires, and decisions. A person who cannot govern himself will eventually be governed by something else. Anger, fear, temptation, approval, distraction, or the expectations of others. Think about how easily a single emotion can change a person's behavior. Someone criticizes you, and suddenly you feel the need to defend yourself. Someone ignores you, and your mind begins creating explanations. Someone succeeds, and comparison quietly appears. An opportunity disappears, and frustration tells you that everything is against you. The event itself may be small, but the reaction can become enormous. This is where self-control becomes a form of power. Self-control does not mean becoming emotionless. It means understanding that an emotion is information, not an instruction. Anger can tell you that something matters to you, but anger does not have to decide what you say next. Fear can warn you about danger, but fear does not have to determine whether you move forward. Desire can reveal what you want, but desire does not automatically mean that pursuing it is wise. The strongest person in the room is often not the person who speaks the loudest. It may be the person who can remain composed while everyone else is reacting. Imagine someone attempting to provoke you. They expect an immediate response. They expect you to become defensive, emotional, or aggressive. But instead, you pause. You breathe, you observe. You ask yourself, what outcome do I actually want? That brief moment changes everything. You have created distance between stimulus and response. Within that distance, you regain choice. This is one of the most important forms of freedom a human being can develop. You cannot control every event, but you can train yourself to control your response to events. You cannot control what people say about you, but you can decide how much importance you give their words. You cannot eliminate temptation, but you can build habits that make better decisions easier. You cannot prevent disappointment, but you can refuse to let disappointment become your identity. Every time you control an impulse, you strengthen yourself. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you build self-trust. Every time you choose patience instead of immediate gratification, you strengthen your ability to think beyond the present moment. And every time you refuse to let someone else determine your emotional state, you reclaim another piece of your independence. This is why self-mastery is more valuable than appearing powerful. A person who constantly needs to prove strength may actually be controlled by insecurity. A person who must always win an argument may be controlled by ego. A person who desperately seeks approval may be controlled by other people's opinions. True strength is quieter. It allows you to listen without immediately defending yourself. It allows you to accept criticism without collapsing. It allows you to walk away from unnecessary conflict without feeling defeated. It allows you to admit mistakes without believing that your identity has been destroyed. The goal is not to control everything. The goal is to become so disciplined internally that external chaos does not easily control you. Your mind will still experience anger, fear, doubt, desire, and uncertainty. That is human. But you can become the observer of those experiences rather than their servant. And eventually, something remarkable happens. You stop asking, what do I feel like doing right now? You begin asking, what choice serves the person I am trying to become? That question is the beginning of self-command, because your future is built by the decisions you make when nobody is watching. Your character is revealed not only by what you accomplish, but by what you repeatedly refuse to become. Master yourself first. Then your goals become clearer, your relationships become healthier, your decisions become more deliberate, and your understanding of power becomes deeper. The person who can govern himself does not need to constantly prove his power. His discipline speaks for him. Strong emotions can narrow perception. When anger takes over, you rarely see the entire situation. You see only the part that confirms why you are angry. Fear can make a small obstacle appear enormous. Jealousy can turn another person's success into a personal threat. Desperation can make a poor opportunity appear like the only opportunity available. In these moments, the mind becomes less interested in understanding reality and more interested in defending the emotional story it has already created. This is why emotional control is not simply about staying calm. It is about protecting the quality of your judgment. Imagine someone criticizes you publicly. Your first instinct may be to defend yourself immediately. You want to explain, correct, attack, or prove that the other person is wrong. But what if you waited? What if you asked yourself, what exactly happened here? Perhaps the criticism contains something useful. Perhaps it is completely unfair. Perhaps the other person is projecting their own frustration. Perhaps you misunderstood their intention. Without emotional distance, all of these possibilities become difficult to see. A calm mind creates options. An emotional mind often creates only reactions. This is where self-control becomes a form of strategic intelligence. You do not have to obey the first emotion that appears in your mind. You can observe it. You can study it. You can ask what created it and whether acting upon it will move you closer to the person you want to become. Anger can provide information without becoming your commander. Fear can warn you without deciding your future. Disappointment can reveal what matters to you without convincing you that everything is lost. The mature person does not say, I should never feel these emotions. They say, I will understand them before I act. That distinction is powerful. When you create a pause between emotion and action, you gain something most people overlook: perspective. You begin seeing patterns instead of isolated moments. You notice that certain people repeatedly provoke you. You recognize that certain environments consistently drain your attention. You discover that some of your strongest reactions are connected to insecurity, pride, or old habits, rather than the actual situation in front of you. Self-awareness transforms reaction into information, and once you understand your patterns, you can change them. The next time you feel provoked, do not immediately ask, how do I win this? Ask what is actually happening. Then ask, what response serves my long-term interests? That second question changes everything. It moves you away from ego and toward strategy. It moves you away from temporary emotional satisfaction and toward lasting consequences. It reminds you that you are not required to turn every feeling into an action. Real strength is not the absence of emotion. Real strength is the ability to experience emotion without surrendering your judgment to it. The person who masters this becomes increasingly difficult to destabilize. Not because life becomes easier, but because their inner world becomes more disciplined. They stop allowing every external event to dictate their internal state, and that is where genuine power begins. Your attention is one of the most valuable forms of power you possess, yet most people give it away without realizing what they are doing. Every day, your mind is surrounded by invitations to become distracted. Notifications demand your eyes, arguments demand your emotions, social media demands comparison. Other people's opinions demand explanation. Entertainment demands another hour. And slowly, without making a conscious decision, you can spend your entire life reacting to things that were never part of your true purpose. This is why learning to control your attention is a form of self-mastery. Where your attention goes, your mental energy follows. Where your mental energy goes consistently, your habits begin to form. And where your habits lead, your life eventually follows. Think about how easily a single negative comment can occupy your mind for hours. Someone says something disrespectful, and although the conversation lasts 30 seconds, you continue replaying it long after it has ended. You imagine what you should have said. You create arguments that never happened. You predict what the person might say next. You allow someone else's words to occupy valuable space inside your mind. The person who made the comment may have forgotten it already, but you are still carrying it. This is a quiet surrender of power. Self-control means recognizing that not everything deserves access to your attention. Not every criticism requires a response. Not every disagreement requires victory. Not every person deserves unlimited emotional energy. Not every opportunity deserves pursuit. This does not mean becoming cold, arrogant, or indifferent. It means becoming selective. A disciplined mind asks, does this deserve my attention? If the answer is no, you let it pass. That simple ability can transform your life. Imagine how much energy you would recover if you stopped obsessing over people who do not understand you. Imagine how much progress you could make if you stopped comparing your journey with everyone else's. Imagine what would happen if you stopped checking for approval every few minutes and redirected that attention toward building something meaningful. Your attention is not infinite. You have a limited number of hours every day, a limited amount of emotional energy, a limited capacity for deep concentration. Treat those resources as valuable. Do not spend them carelessly. The modern world rewards reaction. Something happens and you are expected to comment immediately. Someone disagrees and you are expected to defend yourself. Someone succeeds and you are encouraged to compare yourself. Something goes wrong and you are encouraged to become emotionally consumed by it. But you do not have to react simply because something happened. You can pause, you can observe, you can decide whether the situation deserves your involvement. That pause is powerful because it returns choice to you. The mature person does not ask, how can I respond to everything? They ask, what deserves a response from me? There is a difference. Your goals require concentration, your relationships require presence, your growth requires reflection, your work requires an uninterrupted attention. Your future requires decisions made with a clear mind. Protect these things. If you allow every distraction to enter your mental world, eventually there will be no quiet space left for your own thoughts. And perhaps that is one of the greatest dangers of modern life, becoming so occupied with everyone else's lives that you forget to build your own. Your attention should serve your values. If learning matters to you, give learning your attention. If your family matters to you, give them your presence. If your craft matters to you, give it focused effort. If personal growth matters to you, give yourself time to reflect. Do not merely say that something matters. Your attention reveals what truly matters to you. This is why disciplined people often appear unusually calm. They are not necessarily experiencing fewer problems. They have simply learned not to give every problem equal importance. They understand proportion. They know that some things deserve action, some deserve patience, and some deserve nothing more than letting go. That is real psychological power. You do not become powerful by controlling everything around you. You become powerful when you stop allowing everything around you to control your mind. Guard your attention. Choose your battles. Choose your priorities. Choose what enters your mind, because every hour you spend distracted is an hour you cannot recover. And every hour you invest deliberately becomes part of the person you are becoming. Your attention is your life in its most immediate form. Spend it wisely. Delayed gratification is one of the most powerful psychological skills a person can develop because it teaches the mind to stop confusing immediate pleasure with genuine progress. Human beings naturally seek comfort, reward, recognition, and relief in the present moment. The problem begins when the present moment becomes more important than the future we claim to desire. You may know exactly what you want, yet still sabotage it by repeatedly choosing what feels easier today. The disciplined person learns to recognize this conflict and make decisions based on long-term consequences rather than temporary emotions. Every time you resist an unnecessary distraction and return to meaningful work, you strengthen your ability to focus. Every time you continue exercising when you would rather stop, you strengthen your tolerance for discomfort. Every time you save instead of spending impulsively, study instead of endlessly scrolling, or remain patient instead of demanding immediate results, you are training your brain to value future rewards. These choices may appear insignificant individually, but their psychological effect compounds. You are building evidence that your impulses do not control you. This is why discipline should not be understood as punishment. Discipline is the process of teaching yourself that discomfort does not automatically mean something is wrong. Sometimes discomfort is simply the price of growth. Learning a difficult skill feels uncomfortable. Building a career takes patience. Repairing your character requires confronting weaknesses. Developing emotional maturity requires sitting with feelings you would rather escape. The person who constantly runs from discomfort eventually becomes controlled by it. The person who learns to tolerate it becomes increasingly resilient. Delayed gratification also changes your relationship with failure. When you become dependent on immediate results, a temporary setback feels like proof that your effort is pointless. But when you think strategically, you understand that progress is rarely linear. A failed attempt can provide information. A rejection can reveal what needs improvement. A slow period can develop patience. A difficult season can expose weaknesses that success might have hidden. The deeper lesson is that your future self is constantly competing with your present impulses. The future version of you wants health, knowledge, stability, confidence, meaningful relationships, and purpose. Your present impulses may want comfort, entertainment, approval, or escape. Neither voice disappears completely. The question is which one you repeatedly strengthen. Do not ask yourself whether you feel motivated today. Ask yourself what your long-term goal requires from you today. There will be days when discipline feels easy and days when it feels almost impossible. Your commitment becomes meaningful on the difficult days. You do not need perfection, you need consistency. One disciplined decision may seem insignificant, but thousands of disciplined decisions can completely transform your identity. Eventually, something remarkable happens. You stop seeing discipline as something forced upon you. It becomes something you choose because you understand its value. You begin to experience freedom not as the ability to do whatever you want, but as the ability to refuse what would weaken you. That is the deeper power of delayed gratification. You stop sacrificing your future to satisfy your present mood. You become patient enough to build, disciplined enough to continue, and resilient enough to wait for results. And when the results finally arrive, they are not merely rewards for what you did. They are evidence of the person you became while waiting for them. If your confidence depends entirely on other people's approval, then you have unknowingly handed them control over your emotional state. Their praise can make you feel powerful, while their criticism can make you question your worth. Their attention can make you feel important, while their rejection can make you feel invisible. This is one of the most subtle forms of psychological dependence because it often disguises itself as a desire to be liked, respected, or understood. But there is a difference between appreciating recognition and needing recognition. One gives you pleasure, the other controls you. Human beings naturally seek belonging. We want to be accepted by our families, friends, communities, colleagues, and social circles. There is nothing wrong with that. The problem begins when acceptance becomes the foundation of identity. When you constantly ask, do they like me? Do they approve of me? What will they think? You gradually move your center of gravity outside yourself. Your decisions begin to revolve around other people's reactions instead of your own values. And once that happens, you become easy to disturb. Someone criticizes you, and your mood changes. Someone ignores you, and you question yourself. Someone receives more attention than you, and suddenly you feel less valuable. Someone disagrees with you, and you feel compelled to prove yourself. Notice the pattern. The other person may not even realize how much influence they have over you. Yet their opinion is determining your emotional condition. Self-mastery begins when you reclaim that authority. This does not mean becoming arrogant or refusing to listen. In fact, emotionally mature people are often excellent listeners. They can receive criticism without immediately becoming defensive. They can admit mistakes without feeling humiliated. They can change their behavior when evidence shows that change is necessary. The difference is that they evaluate feedback instead of automatically obeying it. Ask yourself, is this criticism useful? Is it coming from someone whose judgment I respect? Does it reveal something I genuinely need to improve? Or is it simply another person's frustration, insecurity, preference, or misunderstanding? Not every opinion deserves equal weight. If a skilled teacher tells you that your work needs improvement, listen carefully. If someone who has never attempted what you are building mocks your ambition, you may acknowledge the comment without allowing it to become your identity. This is emotional independence. You stop confusing someone's opinion with objective truth. You stop treating rejection as proof of unworthiness. You stop treating praise as proof of superiority. Both are temporary signals. Neither should define you. Your deeper question becomes, am I living according to standards I genuinely respect? That question changes everything. Because when your internal standards become stronger than your hunger for approval, you become calmer. You no longer need to perform a personality simply to remain accepted. You can say no without drowning in guilt. You can disagree respectfully. You can walk away from unhealthy situations without desperately needing everyone to understand your decision. You become comfortable with being misunderstood. And that is a powerful form of freedom. There will always be people who dislike your choices. There will always be people who misunderstand your intentions. There will always be people who judge you according to their own experiences. You cannot control that, but you can control whether their judgments become the foundation of your identity. Build your confidence through evidence. Keep promises to yourself. Develop useful skills. Practice discipline. Admit your mistakes. Improve your weaknesses. Live according to principles you can defend privately, even when nobody is watching. Then your confidence becomes less dependent on applause. You do not need everyone to tell you that you are capable because you have experienced yourself doing difficult things. You do not need everyone to tell you that you are worthy because you have stopped measuring your worth through comparison. You do not need constant validation because you have developed something deeper, self-respect. And self-respect is not created by repeating positive statements to yourself. It is created through behavior. Every time you choose integrity over approval, you strengthen it. Every time you choose discipline over impulse, you strengthen it. Every time you admit the truth instead of protecting your ego, you strengthen it. Every time you walk away from something that violates your values, you strengthen it. Eventually, you discover something important. You can appreciate people's approval without being dependent upon it. You can accept criticism without being destroyed by it. You can enjoy recognition without becoming addicted to it. You can experience rejection without believing that you have been rejected by life itself. That is psychological independence. And once you develop it, your relationship with the world changes. You stop asking, how do I make everyone approve of me? You begin asking, what kind of person am I becoming? That is a far more powerful question. Because other people's opinions can change overnight. Your character is built over years. Choose the thing that lasts. There is a form of strength in silence that is often misunderstood. Silence is not weakness, fear, submission, or an attempt to manipulate another person. At its healthiest, silence is simply the space between stimulus and response, the moment where you allow yourself to observe before deciding what deserves your words. In a world that rewards instant reactions, this ability has enormous psychological value. Someone criticizes you, and your instinct is to defend yourself. Someone misunderstands you, and you immediately want to explain. Someone provokes you, and your ego demands an answer. But the disciplined mind understands that an immediate response is not always an intelligent response. Sometimes the first responsibility is not to speak, but to understand what is happening inside you. When you pause, you begin noticing your emotional state. Is your response coming from confidence or insecurity? Are you speaking because something genuinely needs to be addressed, or because your pride cannot tolerate being challenged? Are you trying to solve a problem, or simply trying to prove that you are right? These questions transform silence into self-awareness. Silence also gives you the opportunity to observe other people more carefully. When you stop rushing to fill every space with words, you can listen more deeply. You notice tone, consistency, hesitation, and behavior. You begin to understand that people communicate through more than sentences. Their actions, priorities, and patterns often reveal more than their explanations. This does not mean assuming the worst about people. It means learning to observe without immediately judging. There is also great psychological discipline in becoming comfortable with uncomfortable silence. Many people speak because silence makes them anxious. They explain too much, defend themselves unnecessarily, reveal information they later regret, or continue arguments that should have ended minutes earlier. Learning to sit calmly in silence teaches you that discomfort does not require immediate action. This skill becomes especially valuable during conflict. When emotions are high, the quality of your thinking often decreases. A pause can prevent an emotional sentence from becoming a permanent consequence. You may discover that the issue deserves a calm conversation rather than an angry reaction. You may realize that you misunderstood the situation, or you may recognize that continuing the argument will accomplish nothing. But silence should never become an excuse to avoid necessary communication. Self-control does not mean refusing to speak when something important must be addressed. Sometimes strength means calmly expressing a boundary, admitting a mistake, asking for clarification, or having a difficult conversation. The objective is not to become silent. The objective is to make your words intentional. The mature person therefore does not ask, how can I always have the last word? They ask, what response will serve the situation best? Sometimes that response is a sentence. Sometimes it is a question. Sometimes it is an apology. And sometimes it is silence. The power lies in being able to choose rather than react. When you develop that ability, you become less vulnerable to emotional pressure. You no longer feel compelled to answer every criticism, win every argument, or justify every decision. Your calmness becomes a reflection of inner clarity. You begin to understand that not every moment requires your voice. Some moments require observation. Some require patience, some require action. And the wisdom is knowing the difference.